So yeah, have any of you watched it? Cobb, I know you've watched this video.
Yeah.
I haven't.
You haven't. I'm gonna not lie, I kind of agree with, like I said, 30 to 50% of it.
I think there are legit points, and I'm gonna point out those legit points, while also just kind of making fun of the whole. I think the only problem I have with this video is just this weird. Oh, we
Assumption.
lost Gemini. Oh, you know what? Hold on.
I'm still here. I can hear you.
Yeah, I know. I lost your image, so hold on.
Oh.
I accidentally deleted you trying to find my background here. So let me just put you back in there. There you are. Let's put you right where you belong.
Fine.
Under the bus.
You can erase me.
In the dustbin of history. Here we go. There you are. Underneath your title. Anyway, I guess we could get started. So, here we are. It's your girl, Cav, back with the boys. Slightly different group of boys, mostly the same, but we do have a new person today. For 3 homos and a pussy. Still 3. Maybe someday we'll be up to 4. Who knows? But let's go down the line and just let people introduce themselves.
I'll start because I'm awesome. I'm Gemini, and I'm just fucking awesome.
Sweet. Tennyson.
I'm Tennyson. I just banged my hand. Ow.
Don't hurt yourself, Tenny.
No, do it more.
No.
Don't make me choose. Come on.
And I'm Danimal, and I apologize for being an asshole and not letting Gabbles talk last time. I'm so sorry.
No, you did fine.
No.
Gabbles chose not to talk. You heard me. I gave him several opportunities, and he just was like, I'm smoking a cigarette.
Oh.
That is true.
That was super funny. All right, so
Poor
I mean,
Gabbles.
we can see the title, but what's the video we're covering today?
We're watching a video about gay Disney kids, or rather, a guy that wishes Disney had more gay kids.
More gay children. I think that's a goal.
Or not more, but some. I guess his contention is that there's none.
At least 3/4 of us can get behind. No.
All right, here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. One of the first questions we are asked when we come out is, how did you know you were gay?
Okay, guys. I think that's your cue.
What an offensive question, Cobb.
It all started when I was born. See, our whole universe was in a hot, dense state, and nearly 14 billion years ago, expansion started. Wait. The Earth began to cool, the autotrophs began to drool, Neanderthals developed tools, we built the wall, we built the pyramids, math, science, history, unraveling the mystery that all started with a Big Bang.
So the Big Bang was gay?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, it's pretty gay.
Specifically the TV show, gay in the schoolyard sense, not in the homosexual sense.
Oh, okay.
And then it's a lame show.
That's fair.
I mean, it was just it is exploding, and I would say, look at like galaxies; they're all like white and sparkly, and exploding white and sparkly stuff. I would say that's pretty gay, don't you think? Just a little bit.
Yeah.
I will say, when I was a kid, I thought I was going to grow out of it. What did you guys think?
I was sure that like everybody had gay thoughts because I was in a very Christian environment where everything was very sanitized, and you know they talked about homosexuality being bad right next to having sex outside of marriage being bad. So I thought that the two things were probably about as common, and then everybody had to deal with like lust the same way I did. It's kind of surprising, actually, that no, not everybody has homosexual thoughts.
Well, I mean, nowadays we are in the 21st century. I mean, I think that's true, right?
That's true. But if I can be honest, I'm not actually sure. I'm not sure I can recall what I thought. I just sort of I guess I just kind of went with it because like there was nothing else I could really do, and there was that at that point in my life there wasn't really any stable authority figure around when I was a teenager to tell me no, and I didn't have any friends, so I just kept to myself pretty much.
I fought it. I don't know about you. I fought it for a while.
Yeah.
Well, you know me. I fought my heterosexuality with a righteous vigor, but unfortunately.
But I mean, if I had to place an age on it, I guess middle school. Middle school is probably when I knew.
7th, 8th grade.
Yeah, 6th grade for me.
I don't know exactly when. It's kind of a slow realization throughout high school.
Oh yeah. Well, I may or may not have had a sleepover encounter when I. You know what? I'm not gonna talk about that.
Don't
So-
name any names here.
Well, and it also it's like I was like in 6th grade, so it's weird to like talk
Yeah.
about it on the internet.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, nah, I gotta get off that topic.
So, Cav, when did you realize that you were
We're
gay?
a cat. Oh.
Or a cat.
When did you realize you were a gay feline?
Well, I never realized I was a gay feline until just now, but before that, you know, I was a very like emotionally mature child. I really I didn't have crushes, and it's funny because I talked to my mom about this, and she would talk about having like these really intense crushes when she was a little girl, and I just never had that.
Mm-hmm.
She would talk about being in high school, and one of her stories that she likes to tell us is she had this diary, and she would fill in the diary with what this one boy was wearing every single day. Like, oh, he's wearing that red sweater today. And she would just like fill diaries with this information. And as she
Is your mom a serial killer?
And as she tells she tells me these stories, I'm like, I just do not connect with that at all. I never had obsessive thoughts about boys. I never had obsessive thoughts about anybody, to be honest.
See,
So,
did she have like a shrine? Did she have like a shrine like Helga has her Arnold shrine to Hey Arnold, where she just has an effigy of his?
I wouldn't be surprised if she did. She turned out not to be a serial killer. She was also like one of those ladies who in high school people thought she was a lesbian because she was kind of butch, but she was also like super into dudes. So
Oh.
Well, she's not a serial killer as far as you know.
She's just like a very tomboy, very into boys type of person.
It's a shame tomboys went extinct a few years ago, huh?
Yeah.
Most tomboys are like aggressively straight in my experience. Like they just want a dude so bad. Like they don't want to hang out with some chick. Kidding me? Chicks are annoying.
That is
true.
That. That's just a fact.
That's what we can all agree with here. Well, let's hear what this guy has to say in his weird. This is the pet peeve I have about these weird framing devices.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be like comedic, and I just okay. Let's go.
I'm not a big fan.
I don't know what most people are expecting when they ask this. Do they expect some thrilling love story with a sudden shock of discovery, a meeting of pure affection and yearning, seeing beyond the cultural conditioning of courtship rituals, love in spite of social standards? Or are they fishing for an answer that has something to do with how you got a raging stiffy at summer camp whenever a certain camp counselor came around?
I do have
Wet
to,
Hot American Summer.
I do have to say, I really like the Disney announces 8th gay character.
It's pretty funny.
It's so true.
Oh man.
We're finally having a gay character, you guys. They're gonna make out in the background.
I will say,
never gonna see it.
Compared to the guys on the last video, this guy is actually genuinely funny sometimes.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a personal question, and in the latter sense, a little inappropriate for water cooler small talk. Yet, in most cases, people who ask this question seem a little disappointed in the inevitable answer. You know, given that most of the time the question is asked, the answer will be, well, I just always knew. Some of us don't even put a whole lot of thought to it. We literally do just know. Like for me, I had a crush on Billy the Blue Power Ranger when I was about 4.
Whoa, okay, who was your first crush at 4?
It didn't really have one because I was 4.
I mean,
I don't know any. That's just a creepy question. Oh my.
You know, I think here's my theory. I think girls are more commonly they will more commonly have crushes at like really young ages.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I crushed on Han Solo, I'm not gonna lie. But that wasn't like when I was like 4. Like, I don't even remember what the fuck I was doing when I was 4, which I don't think that I think he's just saying it to say it. I don't think he actually means it.
I don't see how you can have like a crush before you before you're at least like 8 or 9, because I feel like crushes are really sort of a puberty related thing that they seem to occur around the time that people start developing hormonally from like child to teenage to adult, and that's when those emotions become really really strong. Like you feel a sort of weird, almost pathological like obsession with this really warm feeling you get when you look at someone.
Yeah,
Right?
it's possible. I mean, I know, again, I'm going to talk about my mom a little bit more. My mom was like this kind of person who had like severe crushes on Robin from the Batman TV show.
The animated
She was
series.
like when she was like a little bitty baby. She's like, yeah, I was in love with Robin. And
Are you talking like animated Batman or like Burt
live
Ward?
action. I'm talking live action, baby.
The one with Adam West?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Because that was her time, you know? She would watch the show when she was little. She had this like little baby crush on him. And when I think about girls,
she used to crush on Burt Ward.
And when I think about like little girls, I think little girls are pretty, and maybe it's the emotional piece, right? It's like they're just more emotionally primed to get those connections at that age.
Holy child psychology.
I don't know. Like,
hey, oh my god!
Some cultures they don't even
of
separate like kids like into boys and girls because like they haven't developed anything yet until like they get older. I'm not sure how much.
Yeah, that's why I say it's probably
Kids have
mostly
to.
like emotional rather than anything remotely sexual.
Yeah.
There we go. I threw a
That makes
picture of
sense.
Burt Ward in the kitty cat chat there.
Oh, he's not bad. I like the hair.
I'm gonna
I
put
like
it
the
up.
hair.
Oh, he's cute. Look at him.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
What's he doing in that picture?
I think he's just yawning and someone snapped it at the wrong time.
Yeah, you think?
You mean the right time?
Yeah, I'll put up a nice picture of Burt Ward to make sure, you know, so your mom doesn't look like a creep. Here he is. Look at him. He's a very all-American boy. He is cute.
Very, very
oh
cute.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Nice eyes.
Look at that. All right, let's keep going.
And that was that. It comes with a little bit more self-deduction. We see ourselves as being a little bit different than the rest of our friends, and certainly different than how we're told we should be in media. Picture books, television, movies, stories in general. What we're told to feel about girls is how we feel about boys. The nervousness, the confused obsessions, the little butterflies in your tummy. And of course, naturally, the inverse for lesbians. And of course, the chaotic bisexual profile where you feel that way about boys and girls. And of course, all the ways in which this identity growth applies to trans and gender non-conforming children.
So how do we think this? Man, I just
see.
I can't
take
get past
a little bit of
the whole like trans and gender non-conforming children piece. Maybe that's just me.
That's sort of its own thing. But regarding like what he said about like bisexuals, and I'm sort of speaking from experience. I think like for some people, bisexuality can be sort of latent. Like you don't get those feelings necessarily like for one sex or the other until you're older. Like you could hypothetically you could just grow up and just only find girls attractive, and then suddenly you start finding men attractive too. Like it just starts developing as you become an adult.
Yeah, and this whole like kind of thing that he's on kind of rings a little false. Like it rings like he's imagining his life as a Disney movie almost. Like nobody blossoms that way that he's describing.
Well, you know,
I think this.
it's a tricky thing. I think, what was it? My dad was talking about James Randi or some of the, no, it wasn't James Randi. It was the guy who wrote The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. What was that?
Oliver Sacks.
Oliver Sacks. Yeah. So there's this article my dad was talking about where he talks about how memory isn't really real in the way we think it is. We think of memory as like a bunch of film reels that we stored up over time. When in reality, memory is something you create each time you remember something.
Like it's created afresh.
It's created afresh, and there's a new angle to it. Every time you remember something, you're adding another like layer of meaning and another layer of activity onto it, and to the point where people have false memories altogether, right?
Yeah.
Are you telling me there's not a group of like 5 people in my head putting glowing balls into a library and visiting all my personality islands?
I you know, I can't speak to your experience, but I'm only saying
Disney fucking lied to me.
Like, memory is this tricky thing where we really depend on it and we really think of it as objective, but in reality, it's a continued narrative process of looking back and sort of reimagining it each time.
Yeah.
I guess that's part of what makes things like Alzheimer's and dementia so terrifying.
Yeah.
Is because you think of memory as just, oh, I know this, but then one day you wake up and you either forget it or you can't remember it in
Right.
its clear detail, and that just it's a slow descent downwards until everything starts fading and fading and fading until you can't remember how to do the most basic tasks to recognize the most familiar faces.
Right.
Yeah.
And what it makes tricky is like looking when you've become to be an adult, right? And you're thinking about your sexuality and all the things that led up to it. It's easy to think back and be like, oh, I saw it at this point and this point and this point. And maybe you did, and more than likely you probably did, right? If this is something ingrained. But it's also really hard to draw apart memories that you are now adding this lens to.
Yeah,
You've come to this conclusion. So you're looking back and be like, oh, that was because I was gay. Like, well, it could be, or you could be just totally kind of inventing this narrative about your childhood experience.
Oh yeah, totally.
As a sort of post hoc something I notice is that people, when we remember things, we try to put them in a sort of rational or reasonable order, when in reality, memories seem to be more like just bundles of experience that aren't necessarily stored in a certain way in the order in which they occur. Like you might remember the smell of a certain food when you go to a restaurant, but you don't remember the exact order of the events. Like you got into the car, you drove, you parked, you walked into the restaurant, you ordered your food, you smelled it, you ate it, and paid and left. You might not remember those in that exact order, so you just assume, based on how you normally do things and how events usually progress in your experience, that that's how it happened. But in reality, all you can say is the memory is just the smell, the scent of the food, the odor, whatever it was, right? Yeah. So when you take these bundles of experience and these recollections, you tend to sort them into a certain order and then justify or rationalize why they happened the way that they did. Oh, it was because of X or Y or Z, rather than just focusing on the experience. You try to order and then justify and explain the experience.
I agree.
Has anybody ever listened to Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker?
No, I'm not a pretentious douche, so.
Well, it's actually really interesting because it's by a guy whose musical project was to talk about memory and memory loss and like dementia and stuff. And so he has this massive 6-hour album called Everywhere at the End of Time, and it's divided into 6 roughly hour-long sections, and it's remixes of old jazz tunes from the 20s and the 30s. But as each stage in the album is a stage of Alzheimer's or dementia, and the memories of the songs, they get remixed and chopped up and slowed down and fainter until you get to stage 6, which is just white noise for about an hour or so,
Hmm.
and it's terrifying.
Yeah, because I've heard about that? Wasn't he dealing with
Yeah.
dementia in his family or Alzheimer's in his family?
I
And that's
think
kind
so,
of
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, jazz is terrifying.
It sure is.
Between just knowing or piecing together our identity from hundreds of small, fragmented, otherwise unremarkable shreds of evidence, we figure it out, sometimes with no clear, discernible moment of grand realization. We wake up and say, oh crap, I've been like this all along.
But I'm a Cheerleader. Great movie.
Eh.
Ugh.
Something about this photo is just kind of unsettling
Well,
in the way
yeah.
that their heads are moving. It's like something out of a John Carpenter film.
Oh, this movie's so funny. It's a but I'm a cheerleader, and she's a lesbian, and she goes to a gay conversion camp, and I think RuPaul is one of the counselors, and it's got one of the emo chicks from The Craft is in it, I think. Anyway, it's a great movie.
Sounds
It's
really good.
fantastic. It's a comedy.
I'm going to do this all along. How much emotional turmoil this causes depends on how homophobic your parents and community are. Sometimes you come out into a gentle place.
Here, I just want to point out something here because this is kind of what irks me about him is his cynicism and his negativity. Because the way that he just said that is it depends on how homophobic your community is and all that kind of stuff. But the way that he could have framed it was it depends on how supportive your community is. You know, he could have framed it in a positive way because we are turning a corner, and we have turned a corner for the past 20 years in gay acceptance. But he goes on later to also just lay all the blame at like straight people and heteronormativity and stuff. And that's like my main contention with him is that he's looking to lay blame on groups, and he's looking to lay blame on society and all this. And it's just not, it's more complicated than that.
You know,
On a scale of
one group that I noticed throughout this video he didn't blame?
Who?
China.
Hmm.
I think he mentions China once, doesn't
Does he? I feel like I was listening for it because the whole time he went through his rant, I'm like, you know, this is because it's China, right?
he?
Yeah. The entire reason that like Disney puts all its gay characters in the background is so that they can easily like censor those scenes for not just China but for Southeast Asia, Middle East, and other and Africa, so they can sell in those areas because
it turns out that America is not the only country in the world, and that America is actually exceptionally
tolerant.
Exactly.
Of different
might not be it might not be
situations.
accepting, but most people just really stopped giving a shit, right?
And it's something to celebrate too, is
Absolutely.
the American fabric, the American culture, and kind of the amazing turnaround that's happened. But he's so cynical this whole video about just everything about our culture, and it just rubs me wrong.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how homophobic was your community, guys? On a scale of
Growing up, because I'm a decade older than you guys, maybe more, right?
Mm.
Growing up, my community was not very accepting. I'll just say that.
So you appreciate the modern age more?
I do. I very much appreciate the modern age more. It's been maybe, like I said, I'm a decade older, and I'm going to use 10 years again. It's been probably 10 years since I've ever heard anything, and just a rando in public just calling me a bad name or going after my husband or I. Like it's been a long time since that happened, and we don't hide it in public. Like we're just a normal couple.
What part of the States do you live in?
Between the coasts.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Okay.
Right, so I'll write that piece of information down so I can slowly track them.
All right. As if you can't tell by my accent where I come from.
He's got the the missile subtracts where it is not from where. Yeah.
Right.
The whole video running in his head. He's like, I'm gonna find this guy.
Yeah.
other times not. Mainstream culture has weird conceptions about how children become gay. The general thought process is that someone does not know or cannot know that they're gay before they're sexually active enough to develop a conscious preference. The question, how do you know that you're gay, or variants of said question, betrays a thought process that indicates that gay is an exception to the rule.
Hold on. Are
mean,
are you telling me
Kev?
gay is an exception to the rule?
Cav, is that
telling-
your
are you-
thought process? It's when you
Is that-
asked us?
Oh. I'm gonna say yes, given that you're like 1% of the population. Yep.
No, we're a little more than that.
Yeah, but we're like
a
75.
little more.
We're we may be 1% of the population, but we're 75% of this podcast.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's true, but you know, just like overall population, you kind of are the exception.
Despite making up only 1% of the population.
Yeah, I mean, that's something to embrace, not something to try and hide and pretend like it doesn't exist. That you're not in the majority, you know?
But no,
Like it's strange.
he's gonna get crazier on this in just like a minute, though.
I know.
Human being who is normal, and that gay or trans or whatever else is added later to this human being. A veneer, a tattoo, something that is added to the self and thus not a fundamental part of the
This
self.
is where his mind reading
We're
starts.
just gonna add a little dash of gay. If you have store-bought, that's fine, but I prefer to make my own. And we're just gonna add a little bit in the batter and then stir it up, get it nice and frothy.
Somebody's
Okay.
chewing, and I think
Somebody
it's
was
Gemini.
like chewing and rustling. Gemini.
I'm sorry. I'm not chewing. I'm just missing the cat. Who might be?
Fair
Who may
enough.
or may not be?
Fair enough.
Fair enough. And we'll allow cat petting, I suppose. But oh man, I lost my train of thought of what he was saying. But
It's like, how dare they suggest being gay is the exception? It's like, yeah, it kind of is. Now, to his point that it's like inborn, I know that like there's a lot of back and forth on this.
yeah, I mean, there's the
Between-
2019 GWS UK study that kind of, was like, oh, it's polygenetic, and there's also environmental influences, probably. And that's kind of what everybody's feeling on it.
Seems to be the conclusion is it's not just one thing.
It seems
Yeah.
like a lot of people want to approach it from either the nature or the nurture side without considering the merits of the opposition. So like people are saying either it's completely inborn and there's like a gene that makes you gay and I can prove it with, whatever. And other people who are like, it's society, man. It's society, man. They made me part of the system.
You know, the Greeks, man, they throw a whole wrench in this issue because they were all super into little boys. It's like how much of that was genetic and how much of that was just culturally how they were told like what attractiveness looked like. Was there like a cultural component to it? It seems to be something.
Wasn't that more of a mentorship relationship, though?
It was both erotic and mentoring.
There was definitely an
a lot of
erotic
ways.
portion to it, though. Like it wasn't just we're platonically into these things. It was at times explicitly we have erotic affixations to the youths of Greece.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that it was
And-
frowned upon when the youths could grow a beard to continue the relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm imagining like,
Agree.
if you were to say take all the populations in the world and compare like how they treat homosexual relationships, you're gonna find a bit of variety, though you'll probably find a fairly consistent sort of, I would say, a taboo, just because it's the abnormality.
Well, I mean, is it any surprise that a lot of civilizations and cultures are focused on procreation and continuing the
Yeah, it's like
civilization culture?
you gotta procreate, otherwise your society's doomed. Like that was
Mhm.
kind
Right.
of the
Right.
feature of most populations. Like you gotta have kids. You gotta
Yeah.
pass on the family line. If you're messing around with another dude or another girl, you can't do that. So you can do so for some civilizations, you could do that on the side, and that was
Well,
okay.
if you can't do that, explain the Omegaverse then, Kyle.
True.
no.
You know, that's just like the idealized version of all the societies. Finally, we could take the Omega male and make him pregnant.
Can you imagine how human
Oh,
history
no.
would have progressed if ancient Greece had discovered Mpreg?
Oh god.
Oh God.
That's right. I'm bringing it up.
Do you think
Women would not exist.
Do you think anybody would want to be an archaeologist after they discovered the first Mpreg idol? And they're like, you know what? Maybe we don't need to.
You know, for all we know, there is.
investigate this."
'Cause they took all that stuff out of what's that city that was buried in volcanic ash?
Pompeii or
Pompeii.
Herculaneum.
They took all the pornographic material out of Pompeii and put it in a storehouse because they didn't want to subject all the normies to it. Like,
Those
for all we
Puritans.
know, there's probably Mpreg in there.
No.
Can you imagine if it's
That's
just like
probably true.
Can you
I
imagine if
mean-
it's just like the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark and it's just locked in some warehouse?
Just all
It's being
ancient
looked
Greek porn.
Look, it's been secured, okay?
We have top
Oh.
men working on it. Who?
Top men. You open it up
Emphasis
and
on
it's
top.
just anime cat boys being pregnant, just flowing.
Yeah,
out.
it's you just like you can't stop looking at it. Your face melts off.
I
Ugh.
remember what I was going to say about him because he'll still start by making like a good point, but then he'll shift into blame, and then he'll shift into setting up a straw man and mind reading criticism about it, and kind of ascribing motivations to things that he hasn't proven.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's kind
Yeah.
of a theme for the video, and it's just I don't know.
So, as gay is an additive component of the self, these people think there must be a singular moment when you become gay. The reality is that the attraction to women is just as remarkable as being attracted to men, in an objective sense. In fact, given that aromantic and asexual people do exist, we should consider it remarkable that we're attracted to anyone at all. So,
Okay.
I mean, see,
Triggered. I'm triggered.
I know, yeah, the asexual
This
stuff.
this line. What? Here. So yeah, it's really remarkable when we have a species that procreates sexually. It's really amazing that we have sexual attraction. It's just like, how did that happen?
I fail to see how remarkable it is that one of the most fundamental aspects of being a mammal, a human being. How I fail to see how remarkable it is. It's the fact of life that generates all other facts of life, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
Like if we were a species that reproduced by budding, like sponges or amoebas, or splitting in half, like like tiny bacteria, and then some of us evolved to reproduce sexually, then yeah, that might be remarkable that they would exhibit attraction, but I fail to see how otherwise it would be remarkable at all, considering that we are a species of animal that reproduces with intercourse.
For
Yeah,
sure.
and his point was that because asexuality exists, it's remarkable that sexual desire exists at all. And like, I don't understand.
It would be the other way
what's-
around,
what's
right?
It is
there.
Because
absolutely there. It's remarkable that
Yeah.
asexuals actually exist.
yeah, it's such a strange sort of
Exactly.
aberration from what you would normally expect. In fact,
It-
sometimes lack of sex drive is sometimes classified as a symptom of certain mental disorders or mental health
Depression.
issues
Yeah,
like
it's.
depression.
I mean, there
or-
are
PTSD.
Exactly.
biochemical things that can happen to people to actually make them that way.
I mean, we have
Mhm.
medications.
Yeah.
We have medications that can treat, the physical symptoms of a lack of a libido in both sexes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can buy it at the gas station for like $2.
Or you just buy liquor.
Anyway,
That'll work.
that's also true.
Just get drunk.
So why is it such a fuss when it comes to letting children know that gay exists? We expose young people to straightness all the time. Straight public displays of affection are without taboo. The news loves depicting happy
Are they?
marriages. Picture books are riddled with affectionate moms and dads. Young people heterosexually kiss all the time in cartoons. The objective of like 80% of YA novels is built around some preteen straight.
I want to point out he showed Adventure Time, but Adventure Time is like known for having a very
Yeah.
Yeah, very gay
Yeah.
romance in it. Because isn't Princess Buttercup and lesbians with the
Kind of.
vampire?
As apparently as it can be in that kind of scenario.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
I just like that you got the name wrong.
mean,
Was it Princess Buttercup? Is it not
It's-
Princess Buttercup?
It's Princess Bubblegum.
No, whatever.
bubblegum. Oh, I mean, I will say here's kind of like my take on this, right? I find it weird when like romance is super pushed in young children's media, and I don't care if it's gay, straight, or whatever. It's just
Yeah,
so
that's
weird.
strange to me as well.
I don't really remember romance in cartoons when I was growing up.
I don't like it, and I think it's gotten more and more pushed lately to have like these romantic encounters in young kids
Shipping.
cartoons.
Yeah, because I don't remember it in Thundercats. I don't remember it in
Like a
G.I.
lot,
Joe.
yeah, like in a lot of the classic cartoons, it was just sort of a non-issue or very much in the background.
I mean,
Either
like
that or it got played up for comedy purposes.
Yeah, it'd be like
like
fun.
even like Batman the animated series, like Selena Kyle was like kind of slinky on Batman and like making like passes at him, but like Batman was like stoic
He's the
and didn't
he's
like
The Sigma male.
Sigma male. Batman, the Sigma male.
Sigma Chad energy.
He's
got that Sigma grind set.
He does. He doesn't listen to the hoes on there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a cartoon growing up that had like romance in it.
Because I think like young kids cartoons, it's just in general, young kids are not interested in that yet.
Yeah, kids are not at that age.
I would disagree. I think that like they're not interested in the romance. They're interested in the shipping wars now. Seems like
Yeah. Well, we
what-
talked about that last time with the Tumblr.
I guess what age would you place that though? Where does that?
The-
sit?
I would
the
place
Tumblr?
that around like prepubescent kids tend to get. I've
I
noticed.
would easily
get into
place
shipping.
like 11 and 12-year-olds.
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
middle school, no?
Like
I think
middle
by
school-ish.
high school they chill out on that shit.
Yeah. Most
But-
of them. Like you're gonna have sort of the fringe group be crazy forever, but
Yeah.
Although I did not watch anime at all, and I'm not an anime fan, and I think anime probably had a lot of romance in it.
Yeah.
anime has
even
a lot
in
of subgenres that sort of lead to that. Yeah.
There are a lot of like
Yeah.
rom-com themed anime, but even in a lot of just in general anime, a lot of romance gets played up for laughs too, like to an obnoxious extent.
Do we want to talk about
Yeah.
the anime to trans pipeline? Is that something we want to talk about?
No.
Well, there's if we can't agree on that, anime to yaoi is just the literal pipeline.
Hey, man.
Oh, look. Hey.
Okay, Shane.
Okay, listen. Shut your mouth and
Anime leads to people thinking about anime boys kissing each other. That's all I'm gonna say. That's it.
oh, you're just asking questions? Is
I'm
that
just asking questions. I got my big
is that
chalkboard up here, and I have things circled and underlined, and I got arrows pointing everywhere. But
And you
you
got two
can't.
cat boys making out, drawn in chalk.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just asking questions here, but I'm pretty sure. Yaoi is even a Japanese word. Coincidence?
Oh
Oh my god.
So is
Alright,
I bet it's
shonen.
French.
Also, I just had a thought. I feel like the reason that like a lot of cartoons are so
That's
heavy on
fine.
romance these days is because a lot of like kids shows are obviously they're made by adults, right? But it seems like at least on the shows I used to watch on Cartoon Network, a lot of these shows nowadays are more about like they're trying to be more adult oriented so that they can get an adult fan base.
Yes.
Mm.
I think that's
And
true.
I think that a lot of people, a lot of the animators and writers are using these cartoons as a substitute for therapy when they project their own personal issues, be they romantic or mental or whatever, onto these characters.
How are
Which I
you
think is-
so controversial yet so correct?
Someday we're gonna talk about Rebecca Schicker. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
If I have to hear one more ukulele song, I swear to God.
Well, And
Hey, I used to love that show.
What, the
Used
I watched it with my
ukulele
baby
show?
sister. The ukulele show, yeah. So
The
watch it with my
ukuleles
sister.
are cute, but man, they're just
And
like
until it stopped being Monster of the Week, and then I stopped caring.
their ukuleles are crack to like millennial confused people who want to see like yaoi ships. It all seems to come together.
I'm an
The
old man and
ukulele
have
was-
no idea what you're talking about.
The ukulele is a noble instrument that was ruined by white hipsters who stole it from the Hawaiians and brought it to Seattle, and that's all. It's the only instrument that any of them know how to play. That or like shitty electric guitar. So
No.
Oh,
Seattle ruins a lot of things, let's be honest.
I just thought of a romance in a kids cartoon when I was growing up. Helga going after Arnold,
Oh yeah.
which was played up for comedy.
Yep.
yeah,
Romance. How does a male and female toddler meet? The first words out of some
Oh, that's gross. Let's all agree.
that's just
Yeah.
grotesque.
Nope,
That's disgusting.
Nope,
That's
Why would
just-
you put this on a? Why would you put this on a child?
Yeah, it's
That's
funny.
just weird.
It's just bros being bros. It's bros having
It's
kids,
just some.
It's
dressing their
kinda
kids up in
weird.
bro gear.
It's
What
kinda
is
weird.
this? What is this boomer ass baby outfit?
Yeah, all baby outfits are for the parents.
That's true.
You know.
Yeah.
Aww, they make such a cute couple. So it's not like kid-friendly romance isn't.
We got the. I'm gonna have to insert the Bob's Burgers cute clip. Oh, they make such a cute couple. Yeah, they sure are standing next to each other. Yep.
Available to young people. But why is it such an ordeal the second it's about two boys or two girls? The answer is somehow that we mustn't expose children to sexuality. Okay, well, how is two boys holding hands any more inherently sexual than a boy and a girl holding hands? Bear in mind, the Beatles owe their skyrocket to fame thanks to their song, I Want to Hold Your Hand. But at the time, this was essentially a scandal. My daughter holding hands out of wedlock. Rock music before this was about how pretty your girl was. Touching and kissing was considered to be absolutely unsuitable for even teenagers. Elvis was so racy because he made songs about dancing with girls. His gyrating pelvis had women fainting. Imagine if they went to a BTS concert. So in modern times, over half a century after the Neo-Puritan revival of the 1950s, why is gay hand-holding sexual, but straight hand-holding is not? Even among people who are pro-gay in their rhetoric, there seems to be a line drawn when it comes to all audiences' media that depicts any kind of gay representation.
See, now that
Would you say that's necessarily true these days? 'Cause I feel like, I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore. It used to be for sure, but I think that nowadays people don't really give that much of a crap about it.
It
About,
depends. It
Hand holding,
really,
so on.
it really depends on like the audience. So
yeah,
I think so when Beauty and the Beast came out, I don't know if you remember when Beauty and the Beast came out, they're like, oh, we're gonna make what's his name, French guy, gay.
oh yeah, Gaston's like little
Gaston's
simp.
little simp boy. They're gonna make him
LeFou?
gay. LeFou, yeah, LeFou. I think he was
The
called.
fall.
I
Oh,
know,
that's
I
it.
personally know people who posted on Facebook saying, we're not going to watch this movie. We're boycotting, like, really upset.
Oh, did Quartering make 15 fucking videos about it?
No,
Probably.
these are not people who watch The Quartering, okay? These are, like, parents who are very disconnected from like, online culture.
Oh, okay.
These are parents who read the media, they read big-time news stories, and they react. And there were some of them who were very strongly against this. And then,
Yeah,
of course, when the movie came out, and they're like, oh, that was it? It was barely a thing? And,
Yeah,
I
he was
think
like
whenever-
blurry dancing in the
And-
background with a
and
man
it just
for like a
kind
half
of,
a second.
and at that point, when parents realized it was a big nothing burger, they stopped talking about it.
Yeah, then they just realized the movie was a piece of shit.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a segment to the population that really doesn't want this in movies.
And why does that segment exist? Why do you think that segment exists?
You know, I think probably because they look at sexuality in a certain way that says like, here's the standard, and I want to control how my child is talked to about violations of that standard.
Yeah, that they want control over
And they have very suspicious
how their child discovers
and
them.
they're very suspicious of motives of big corporations who are sort of sliding this stuff to their kid, mostly unwittingly, mostly without trying to alert too many people. They see this as a very sneaky move. It's like they're trying to indoctrinate my kid behind my back. And I'm not saying that's valid. I think there's motives here that are not all good necessarily. I think there is some sneakiness that happens.
I think if corporations weren't so focused on pushing social issues and opening quote unquote conversations and discussions about social issues, that a lot of people wouldn't care about this stuff. Like
I agree. And I think that when corporations start like emphasizing like this or that, or they take a very obviously manufactured fake safe stance against something, that only like fuels a reaction which because it's not when a corporation takes a stance on something, it's something processed and artificial and plastic. It's been run through focus groups and it's been run through by the board of directors and so on. It's been sanitized and cleaned and sort of sandpapered down. And then that starts a reaction against whatever this corporation takes a stand for, right? Because every action seems to have an equal and opposite reaction. And so, but that reaction typically it's not as like sanitized or safe. And so it can sort of go off and sort of go a little too out of hand sometimes and start getting a little fringe, right? And I think that's sort of what goes on to some extent when
Is that your
like,
phone,
you
by
get-
the way?
No, I think it's Gemini beeping.
Gemini, you beeping?
Yeah, I'm beaming. I'm sorry.
It's
I didn't
okay.
think you could hear that.
He's just so excited he's beeping.
Bleep, bleep. Just really loves Thomason's commentary.
I'm trying to plug my phone in, and it keeps coming unplugged, and then I keep plugging it right back in. It's a terrible, terrible circle.
Phones do have this function where you can put them on silent.
You
There
could
is-
also turn the phone off and then
Or
charge
you
it.
could throw it out the window. Just like destroy
That
it.
is also true.
I'm shutting it off.
Just like liberate yourself.
I think because we talked about this the last podcast and the formulation. I'm not going to go back into it, the formulation of the gay rights movement, but part of it was a drip, 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 drip into society and not asking for complete and total understanding up front, but dripping it in. And I feel like when corporations got involved into the kind of these social movements, and they figured that they can make a brand and sell a brand with the social movements, then it became forceful and kind of pushing its way into people's lives, and they couldn't get away from it. And we're seeing a lot of reaction to that.
Plus, you have to
And that's
consider the kind of people who are managing like PR and HR departments for corporations. They tend to like sort of that managerial class of people who are oftentimes sort of, well, I would call them miniature control freaks, because it's sort of the perfect position for a lot of them, in that they have this desire to manipulate and control people. And when you're, of course, in a public relations department and you're like a spin doctor, you can sort of it's sort of almost like you've got your access to the cookie jar. If you're that personality type, that kind of person, you can just manipulate and get to tell people what they can and can't say, how they can and can't say it, and so on. And of course, you get to decide what stance the corporation ultimately takes and the way in which they say it and who they're aiming to please. And of course, the people that they're aiming to please oftentimes are a smaller minority of the population compared to the rest of the general populace, right? It's like a lot of these corporations with their branding and their slogans try and aim to appease or to appeal to a certain very, very small demographic.
Some
like
of it is
it's not that the demographic doesn't exist, but like it's not representative of the majority of people who are consuming whatever the corporation is putting out.
What their conundrum is they need to face the fact that there's these two sides of American life. That there's this flashy, progressive, constantly boosting like different virtue signals of the new hottest social trend. There's that, and that's a very powerful movement, and it can really sink you if you piss those people off. But in reality, a lot of the people buying your product are fairly conservative, and they are fairly careful about like the kinds of things they want to expose to their kids at particular ages. And so they're very sensitive about that. And so I think a lot of what ends up happening is the inclusion. I mean, not to mention the international stuff, right? But to think about how to include this stuff, it's very calculated. And it's calculated in such a way as to, okay, how easy is this to splice out?
The way
necessary.
The way that corporations think is they think about not tomorrow. They think about next year's tomorrow. They think about tomorrow 5 years from now. So they're looking at the youth today and they're saying they're into all this stuff. They're into all this social justice stuff. They're into, this very progressive culture. We're going to play into that because we're not looking to get the consumer base now. We have the consumer base now. We're looking to get tomorrow's consumer base. We're looking for them to be lifelong consumers. Right. So they're really sort of playing into this whole political movement that's in vogue right now. And it's just forcing people apart, and it's so divisive. And I don't think that it's the corporations are evil and all that kind of stuff. It comes down to profit motive. And like I said, they're looking at next year's tomorrow. They're looking at tomorrow 5 years from now. And that's what they're advertising to.
Yeah.
And they're just reading it wrong.
And that comes back around and sort of creates a reaction out of people who, even if they aren't really conservative, they didn't really give a shit either way beforehand. It's like McDonald's. I don't care about your stance on, the environment or, immigration policy. Give me my burger. Give me my nuggets. Give me my fries. That's all I care about.
Yes. Yeah, I don't care if McDonald's has a gay mascot or not. Like, I don't need McDonald's to validate me.
I would rather McDonald's not insult me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just thinking of like
with cold nuggets.
I'm just thinking of like gay Ronald McDonald, and it's just Ronald McDonald in my head.
Oh no!
It's just normal Ronald McDonald.
Yeah,
just nothing has changed about him.
Yeah.
And then like the Hamburglar, but he's just like has a rainbow colored cape. The rest of him is just the same as the normal mascot. He runs around stealing hamburgers, and just his little sparkly cape flies behind him.
Stealing burgers, stealing hearts, stealing virginity. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It all works.
Story of my life. Story of my life.
Why Disney?
Yes, back to Disney. Look, I'm sorry, but if you're going to go out of your way to develop a monopoly that's a cross between an amoeba absorbing foreign bacteria and a black hole where IPs can never escape, you're going to be the only place fingers get pointed. In the past, studios and networks escaped criticism about lack of representation because there were a lot of them. So anger about the lack of representation was not directed at a single corporation, but a cultural trend about the business of show. Nowadays, since Disney's been mustering its empire for the better part of the last 30 years, there's so little competition that people's ire about representation is laser focused on specific executives in the company.
Okay, so I think this is like a valid point of argument here.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the initial setup that he has here with Disney and about how they're
Disney is just like hyper, especially now.
I think he is hyper focused. I think he is hyper focused on Disney being so massive in terms of what people see and focus on. I think kids today are not looking to Disney movies as like their entire lives, like maybe like I was as a kid. Yeah. I think a lot of kids are looking to Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, memes. They're on the internet. They're not on.
This does make me, and
Disney Home Video.
This is my thinking. why is it that like queer people made Disney their MCU? They just are hyper obsessed with this whole Disney operation, and I don't understand why.
You mean a lot of gay
A lot of
people are
like
obsessed
gay
with Disney?
people are super obsessed with going to Disney World and talking about Disney and talking about Disney properties.
Should I out my husband and
is
say
it just
that
like
he's
the princess thing? Is it like this obsession with childhood? What is it? What drives this?
I'll say
Yeah.
okay,
I
so
think that a lot of it is like Disney was such a huge part of a lot of people, not just in the queer community, but a lot of the gay community, a lot of people's childhoods, and people see Disney as being the largest, the determiner. It's the company that controls the culture, and so and pretty much owns every single piece of media that like a lot of these individuals like. Like they're not like even kids my age have already stepped away from liking Disney because there's so I mean Disney's crap and there's so much else out there that with the internet we've learned to find things. Like I found retro games and super old anime. And somebody else is going to find and Chinese wuxia novels that are translated into English. A lot of people my age now they know how to move around the internet, but for older individuals, Disney owns all that they know. Everything that they ever loved is owned by Disney.
I will say my husband watches the theme park blogger people every day.
Is it hyper? Is it like hyper gay?
No,
is it
it's usually it's actually the what one of the people we watch is a family, a husband and a wife, and they just what is interesting about it is the theater of it. I think it's the theater of it and the production of it and how high production it is and how on point it is, how quality it is, especially for the theme parks.
I can see that. Like there's a lot of acting that goes into that.
They put a lot of professionals out there.
And I know like Disney even has dedicated events and stuff for the gay community and stuff.
Yeah.
But, just for me, it's kind of like you're grasping at your childhood a little too much. For me, if I knew an adult who was super into Disney, I'd be just kind of like, really, that's what you're holding on to.
I think there's probably a lot of gay adults that feel like they missed out on childhood, like living the way that they are now. They almost wish that they were living that way back then and experiencing the world then as they do now. And it's just we're at this crossroads in kind of America over the past 20 years where it is new, being openly gay and it not being a big issue. I mean, like I said last podcast, 55% of Republicans support gay marriage. Like it's almost not even an issue anymore to be gay out in public.
Right.
And I think a lot of people look at the way it is now and they're angry that it wasn't that way when they were a kid. And they're projecting that anger that they feel onto this current generation and saying, look at all this oppression that's around you when the quote unquote oppression that's around today is like almost nil. I mean, it's assholes online is what the oppression is today. And, I mean, I guess if you want to go further into it, there's certain bills being passed about trans people, but
we're talking baby boomers and Gen Xers, I think, and some older millennials who sort of grew up in the Disney Renaissance, and also like in the 1960s when Disney was still before they entered their dark period. But I think it's primarily about for people who have, you might say, way more money than brain cells, and so they adopt this hyper-consumptive, hyper-consumerist lifestyle where they essentially let themselves be subsumed by manufactured Disney products.
Consume product, be
clothing.
Excited for Nick product.
Yeah, that does seem to be part of it because I guess if you're a gay couple, there's some statistical more likelihood that you're going to be you're gonna have more cash on hand.
Oh.
Cash
Watch
can-
goblins gobbling up all your extra
yeah,
cash.
you don't have as many kids. If you don't adopt, you just kind of, you can spend all your money on Disney cruises and Disneyland
Yeah.
passes and just like living out that childhood you thought you deserved.
Yeah, when you
It's
put
like
it like that, when you put it like that, it brings up the most depressing sort of mental images in my brain. The idea of like people, regardless of whether they're gay or not, people who don't have a family with like children or maybe extended relatives and so on, but they dedicate themselves instead of having they fill that void, you know, instead of having kids, they just fill the void with like or pets, they fill the void with like Disney with these plastic products, these toys and games and movies and these theme parks, these transient sort of experiences that it's fine to enjoy them, a little bit, nothing wrong with that, but like when you make it your entire life and when you consume nothing but, Disney merchandise and so on, it's like it's there are better things you can do with the little time you have on this earth, man. Like
Time to
it's
bring
just
up a picture of some couple's like wall of Star Wars merchandise or
oh
something.
no, is it all those stupid Funko Pops?
Funko Pops and just like here's like thousands of dollars of useless crap we've bought.
I have a Funko Pop. One.
You have one. That's acceptable.
Yes.
If you have a whole wall of them, then we have issues.
I mean, I have
Funko
I have
Pops are
shelf
cool.
after shelf and box after box of books, but I feel like
See,
books are
books you can hoard safely and like it's not uncool to do it.
yeah,
It's like
exactly.
it's actually based to have like shelves and shelves of books that you've never read, but you just like the titles.
Due to the size of the company and the command over as many intellectual properties as it has, people look to Disney in a unique way.
If people wanted like a single coherent argument, like a single coherent anti-capitalist argument, just show them that image.
Oh yeah. That's enough to want to send me them to just send all of them to gulags right there.
Yes.
Just show me that image. Oh, yep, gulags with them.
There
Send 'em.
is, yes, technically, Illumination Entertainment, DreamWorks, and Leica, who make animated films directed at children. Disney has the additional element of legacy. A Disney movie is likely something that will carry over for generations. Something that will not only be kept in a library of DVDs, but something from which we can expect sequels, spin-offs, theme park attractions, and endless merchandise.
Consume.
Consume.
Disney movie will stay around and offer continued returns in a way that the Sing franchise, for instance, is not expected to do. And
Illumination, by the way, is complete dog shit. We all agree on that, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it is the most
Are
soulless,
they minions?
lifeless. Yes,
Minions, yep.
yes, they are. And
Just like
they
hire
are the most.
every celebrity and they're gonna ruin this Mario movie.
They produce the most soulless, unimaginative, just devoid of any creativity animation. Like if you could imagine what an entire movie casting starring skin suits would look like, that would be Illumination, pretty much.
I hate
Just
them.
like skin suits with the voices of celebrities. Horrifying.
And that's due to the fact when we look at a Disney movie, we compare it to every other Disney movie. Whereas we gauge a Shrek movie based on other elements within the Shrek franchise and not necessarily against Shark Tale. A single Disney movie will speak not only to this current day audience, but future audiences as well. A movie that comes out in 1980 will not just be a movie that comes out in 1980, because it will likely be rewatched for years to come.
Who cried at Fox and the Hound?
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh,
I'm crying thinking about it.
the ending of that movie, man.
I remember that the villain in that movie is played by the same actor who portrayed Grandpa Joe in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Jack Albertson.
I gotta rewatch that movie. Like, everything in the last 20 years from Disney has just been soulless slop. And I can't. it's really hard for me to think anything positive about Disney that wasn't from the 80s and 90s and 70s.
Oh yeah.
All
I
the
mean,
like beautiful 2D animation work, you just like feel the flow, and all the 3D stuff. 3D stuff is okay, but most of the time it just really lacks soul in some capacity.
It does, yeah. It lacks that spirit. And this point that he's making about how all of the Disney movies play off of the previous Disney movies and kind of ape in their spiritual sequels. I mean, I think this is a pretty good point that he's making.
It is true, but I mean,
Yeah.
are we gonna see like all the sequels to the new Disney properties? Are we gonna see that
No.
same
Well,
treatment?
not. I mean, what's Cars? Cars is on number 3, right?
Yeah, I just think the treatment we're gonna get for these new Disney properties is not gonna be the same as the original, because the original had something different.
Yeah. And I think Disney's probably going to move. I mean, he talks about how they bought Star Wars, but I think that's what Disney's game plan is, that they're moving away from these animated.
And they totally bungled it. So
Oh my god, yeah.
what does that tell you?
Yeah,
It
so-
tells you that their plan is, we're gonna, be in the cutting edge and do all this like digital blah 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 stuff, and it's like they don't know what they're doing.
No.
They don't understand the soul and the spirit of the original films, like the craft. They've just totally lost that, and they're all in these marketing bubbles of committees talking about, what demographics like what. Like
Yeah.
they're going to be the first people to make a Fortnite movie, and
Disney movie that's not successful upon release gets a legacy because it becomes part of the Disney oeuvre, available for kids and adults to watch on home video and Disney Plus forever. So while there is additional security that a given Disney movie will have a consistent presence in the Disney family, securing otherwise underperforming films a cult fandom, there is the additional pressure that it must fit into the Disney family. Suffice, this has created a bit of a problem for the house that Walt built. Disney, on one hand, owes its success
Yeah, here
to
comes
its
the
brand.
mind reading again.
That's the reason it's become evergreen enough to just drop $4 billion on Star Wars on a whim. Disney didn't need Star Wars, it was doing just fine. Disney's brand was built up on the original values projected by Walt himself. Family-friendly, accessible to children, innovative animation, unabrasive, and timeless. Even if Walt himself didn't have all of these qualities. So on one hand, Disney corporate isn't stupid. They know that there are many gay and even trans-friendly families. By the principle of permitting children to see themselves in these films and knowing that gay children and parents exist, there is an obligation to depict that.
That's my fever dream. That's my that's something I saw in a fever dream one time.
This is exactly what the Christian subset is worried about. Here, we're gonna introduce your kid to some drag queen who will talk about whatever.
Yeah, can I just say that I kind of hate that drag queens are like the face of.
Yeah, what's
gay
the deal? I
representation
thought like
now.
drag queens were controversial now.
Well, it's because a normal gay person is you can't tell that they're gay just by looking at them most of the time.
Yeah,
I mean, this
so you
guy,
have
I think you can, but
Then you get the rare drag straight person.
See, I recall when like doing drag as a thing was like a thing that you did like as a form of entertainment that you didn't necessarily do in like a public setting per se. Like it was done in bars, in clubs. It's like in the same way that you didn't have like can girls in a public setting. They were in like you didn't have like, you wouldn't go to like I don't know, Paris or wherever and see les danseuses just sort of kicking their heels in the air, right? You'd only see that either in like a bar or some kind of nightclub, a cabaret, or you'd see it in like a really lavish Broadway show, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't.
But now
it also
it's
wasn't
for kids. Now
it
kids
also
can
wasn't
see
like
it.
super. Yeah, and I think
Let's
a lot of like people, gay or straight, regardless, take issue with that because it's to an extent I've heard people try to say that drag isn't like an adult thing or isn't a sexual thing, and I just can't bring myself to agree with that because I think it's very much sort of an adult oriented thing, you know, in the same way that the Can girls aren't necessarily for all audiences, right?
The statement that you have to represent anybody in your art because they exist in real life. I think I create a lot of stuff mostly for my personal use. I don't actually write for other people. I wish I had the skill to actually write, but when I write, I typically don't write anything that's reflective of myself or of my own reality. I think that my reality is boring. I typically try and explore fantastical elements in my writing, things that people that don't even exist in reality, and so like, am I somehow doing something wrong whenever I think about about wizards and and I try and write a story about the concept of how power changes a person through the lens of like a short story about a wizard. Is that wrong because a wizard doesn't actually exist? They're not real because they don't represent anything that exists in reality. I should be,
It is
looking at the people around me and
perhaps,
representing those.
yeah, there seems to be kind of a trap between like representing what's real and what's fantastic, and I think Disney especially has to wrestle with that concept because so much of their content isn't real. Like mermaids are not real, and monsters are not real, and dragons are not real, but they have all those things in their content, and they have to sort of engage with the symbolism and the archetypes that go along with it, while also doing this dance with the modern social justice warrior. Like, we need our representation, we need our modern social dramas represented in the media, and it's like those two things don't really fit, because what are archetypes? Archetypes are things that fit a very broad spectrum of human experience that I think if you were to narrow down and talk about like minority groups have experiences, but they don't apply to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's kind of the point, is that like,
No,
you
I kind of
can
disagree
create.
with that. I kind of disagree with that. I think minority groups experience the same experience as most everybody when we're talking about archetypes. I mean, archetypes are just the suggestion
Sure.
of life, the overall, just the broad brush strokes.
I think
life.
The struggle is, so let's say I was a Disney executive, right? And I'm looking at a movie and I'm trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get the largest possible audience to buy into this movie? Am I going to have the main character be in love with someone of the same sex? Probably not. The idea of romance and being in love with someone is universal, but the experience of being in love with the opposite sex has its own temperament. It has its own elements to
its
it.
own history and
that
elements and
are
archetypes and
difficult
stereotypes.
if you're to take that and be like, okay, our main character is going to be gay, right? And we're going to try to sell this to mainstream audiences. Mainstream audiences are going to be very skeptical of that product, because ultimately they're going to be very skeptical of the relationship that's depicted. And I think we see this in like movies that depict same-sex relationships tend to do well in certain areas. Like, they tend to do well with sort of artistic types, they tend to do well with progressive types, people who are in that minority tend to be very successful. But when it comes to like mainstream, basic, flyover country people, if you show them that movie, they're going to be like, huh? What's this? This is weird. I don't get this. And they're just going to automatically have like this gut response against it. And I don't... That could be something to overcome, but it's not obvious to me necessarily how to do that easily.
I think you can overcome the negative reaction to it But
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be that element of just be like, well, this isn't my experience, and I'm not really interested in
Right.
this. Like, you're not going to force people to be interested in something that they're not interested in.
Yeah.
You know?
It's easier to sell a product that contains a heterosexual relationship. It's just, it always has been. You know, I guess you'd be positive or optimistic about those prospects in the future, but I think having that dimension in kids movies is gonna end up being more positively received on average, just because it touches a little more of the broader experience than, say, a different kind of relationship.
Especially since whenever I think another aspect is that whenever they try and show like a gay relationship or homosexual relationship, they try and specifically separate and segregate that relationship from the typical heterosexual relationship and use they don't take pull from the same stereotypes and purposefully anytime. I mean, there's a lot of grandstanding even whenever there isn't anything shown, like we saw with Gaston's sidekick. They try and play things up and exaggerate instead of like making instead of making a real relationship. The entire end goal is marketing, so it's very it's very artificial to begin with. So even if you do get that relationship, it's not real. It's artificial. It's bullshit.
It often plays
Yeah.
both sides. Yeah.
And it all falls on the creators, and just I don't think that the current crop of creators will give us a genuine story with that theme in it
Yeah.
at this
No.
point in time.
It's
They're
just don't
more
think-
Again, I
interested
think-
in their own personal
I
advancement.
think these kinds of stories cannot survive a story by committee scenario. That's really what I
No.
think.
It needs to be small independent creators telling a personal story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just when you said that it can't be Disney, period, I totally agree with that, because I don't think that Disney has the chops to pull something like that off at
Yeah.
all.
Well, something like what?
Like
To
a
represent a homosexual relationship.
and not have it be
any-
a spectacle, not treat it as if it's a spectacle,
Oh,
which is all
to
that they've done, which is
to
all they've done,
respect
and
it.
I don't think he understands that
For
about
sure.
The only
the
place
spectacle aspect.
that you would have at Disney is as a fucking joke. That's
Yeah.
it.
Or as
Sad,
a little
but
animated short they put at the beginning of something that
They did. There's one called
Well,
Out
yeah.
that came out a couple
Right.
years ago, and it's a purple gay dog that comes down on a rainbow to disco music,
oh my goodness.
and then the guy swaps positions with his dog, so he's wearing a collar throughout the whole thing, and he sniffs his dad's butt at one point.
Well, stop. Are you kidding?
Yeah. Thanks, Disney.
Are you joking?
I am not joking.
Oh my god.
So they play it off as a joke.
I bet they, really played well with the Midwest conservative.
Well, it's a cute short. My husband and I watched it together, and he's like, "Wow, I feel completely pandered to. This was awful."
It sounds like sketchy.
It is very pandering.
Yeah. All right.
Disney movies kind of need to be the film equivalent of easy listening radio. They don't really want to rock the boat. The long-term success of the company and being able to weather hardship is owed to possessing a library of material that is mostly inoffensive. As time has gone on, certain...
Yeah, it's not like they want people to remember that movie. I'm pretty sure that they would rather have that completely erased from everybody's minds.
Yeah, I think Song
so
of
that
the
they
South
could sell
only-
without any sort of controversy.
Well, too
Yeah.
bad, because I have that entire song memorized. I actually-
Zippity doo dah, zippity
Zippity-yay, my oh my, what a
It's a
wonderful
really good song.
day.
That's a shame.
It is a very fun song. Honestly, I've watched Song of the South, and it's not really so much like super racist as much as it is sort of outdated and boring. Because the only funny or interesting parts at the end of it is like with Brer Rabbit and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And like Like, I can't even remember the plot of what goes on in the live action portion because it's so dull.
Yeah, he's just
Like,
sitting and
it's
telling kids stories.
yeah, for the most part, like this. I think the main so it's set in like the post Civil War South in Georgia. I think like the
Right.
1870s or 80s, and is like this little boy goes to his parents, his family's
Plantation.
their plantation house or something, and like he doesn't want to be there because his dad's like doing journalism work somewhere off in like Atlanta or someplace, and he like tries to run away with these two black kids that who also sort of they keep like some like like former slaves who just didn't leave the plantation, I guess, and Uncle Remus is one of them. And Uncle Remus like helps the boy, the little white boy, figure out his like problems or whatever, and reconcile
Aw.
with his mom and so on. It's just incredibly boring. Like, nothing really, if I recall, nothing terrible really happens in the live action portions, but the animated segments with like Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear and Brer Fox, those are the only parts that are really really worth your time. So
The only other
yes,
like controversial content I know from Disney is like the Pickaninny centaur from Fantasia that they cut.
which was
Yeah.
scrapped. I think I don't think did they
Super
even make it.
scrapped because it was bad.
Yeah, that was not kosher.
Didn't it even not make it into the final cut of the film?
Oh no, it did
Ah.
absolutely didn't, because I've
Yeah.
seen the YouTube uploads of it. And I'm like, nope, that did not make it.
Yeah, but
Different
yeah,
times, man. Different times.
There, let's
Yeah.
keep going. We're only 8 minutes in.
oh,
Once accepted storytelling have become problematic. But for the most part, Disney's creative mandate was to remove as much provocative thought from a story as possible to allow the emotional simplicity to be very accessible to audiences of all ages. And this is where the problem is developing.
that's just propaganda. You just defined propaganda basically,
Pretty much.
which I kind of
Disney.
agree. Disney is sort of propaganda of a sort. It's propaganda for Disney.
Yes, buy our products.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
We've
message.
always expected media to reflect the social values we hold. It's why early Disney was so white, so wafy, so straight, and had an obsession with depicting monogamous love at first sight, and why older single women were so scary. But the
Man, can I just say I wish more Disney movies involved polyamory and like all the races. Just like a
Well-
giant pile of all the races.
A lot of the early Disney movies were based on fairy tales. Snow White,
And they
Cinderella.
were based on European fairy tales,
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah,
I mean,
they
this
were
is the
white.
most bullshit.
And
This
yeah,
is the
they
most
were
bullshit part
straight.
that I've heard so far.
And they
The
were all
reason
straight,
why
but
they made so many Disney movies that are like because they tried to make darker tales that were more provocative before this, and they failed horribly. They like it isn't like they started out wanting to make this. It's just that it turned out to be so profitable whenever they started making these fairy tale movies.
And
They
some of the
started with
best,
The Black Cauldron, which was awesome, by the way.
some of the best
But-
Disney movies have some of the darkest material in, any of the Disney canon, like Beauty and the Beast, where if you there's a thing where if you see the part of the movie where Gaston falls to his off-screen death, if you pause and go frame by frame, you can see the animators drew a little skull and crossbones in each of his eyes as it focuses on a close-up before he just drops to his death.
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
all the mothers of main characters getting killed in the Disney canon, like Bambi, for instance, or Fox and the Hound, or The Lion King, obviously. But like, there's a lot of dark subject matter. Most of it parental death related.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was borrowed from the fairy tale material that they drew
Mhm.
from.
Yeah.
Plus, like the bit where you talked about single older women, that's more of an archetype, really. That the evil mother. Well, it was originally an evil mother, or like a domineering mother, and this is like I think Carl Jung talks about this idea of like a domineering mother who tries to control her son and manipulate him,
Right.
and sort of keep him childish in a childish state. Of course, in later editions of these fairy tales, it became like a stepmother. Like in Hansel and Gretel, the poor woodcutter remarries, and his new wife is just awful and wants to kill Hansel and Gretel, so she sends him in the woods, right? Or,
Yeah.
the evil queen in Snow White, or the stepmother and stepsisters in Cinderella, and so
And
on.
like most fables, if you look at the data, there's a reflection of reality there. Step parents are like insanely more likely to abuse children
Oh my
of
gosh.
those who they enter relationships with. It's not
Yeah,
it's not even close. It's insanely high. And because
they-
there's no genetic motivation to keep them around, and there's actually a competition because you're trying to get the attention of the adult while these kids are in the way. So there actually is sort of an impulse to kind of
Yeah.
abuse and get rid of kids
Pretty much.
and sexually abuse them. That's the other horrible
That's also
factoid,
it's horrific. It's just ungodly.
but it's very
Anyway.
common.
Majority social climate of today leans towards social justice, voices for the underrepresented, healthy depictions of romance as opposed to idealized ones, freedom of identity, and, most importantly, fighting for these values in spite of resistance from established restrictions.
But only within a sanitized and corporate-friendly context. Remember, guys.
Correct.
There's a
Mhm.
quote from Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, where it's in the middle of this great monologue that the fire chief, gives to the main character. And remember, he's a fireman, and their job is to burn books to start fires. And he says, the character is explaining to the protagonist why the firemen in that book burn books rather than put out fires. And he says, the bigger your market, Montag, the less you handle controversy. Remember that. And he's talking about how, as more and more people started consuming media and so on, books and the authors who wrote them had to be watered down and dumbed down and simplified, and they had to have all their controversial elements removed, which led to the burning of books because they were that made people feel uncomfortable. So it's sort of the same way with the push for social messages and social justice, and a lot of this. It's very sanitized, very corporate friendly. You can be against the system within the parameters that the system tells you to be against the system.
You
right?
can be anti-capitalist as long as you buy this T-shirt that talks about how
Mm-hmm.
anti-capitalist you are.
You can be you can advocate for the decommodification of housing while also buying a $3 million mansion in West Hollywood.
Right.
Naming no names.
I can't imagine who you're talking
Naming no
about.
names,
Oh.
but we all
You
know who he is.
Whoever that is, he sounds very smart. And he
He's
sounds
very.
like he does all
big-
his research.
He is a
It
very.
sounds like
big-brained
he
individual.
probably eats well-cooked chicken breasts and not breaded nugget versions.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very big-brained normal chicken consuming individual who definitely cooks all of his own meals and does not have his mother waiting on him hand and foot like a slave while he streams and steals content. But that's another story that we're not ready to talk about. But anyway,
No.
back to the smooth transition back
Rock
to this
the boat
video.
if one has to. So, Disney neither wants to make media that requires much thought, nor do they want to ruffle anyone's feathers over a movie. But they also want to make media that is as reflective of all audiences as possible, which demands going out on a limb and depicting people over whom some of their audience will have their feathers ruffled. Doing one but not the other will violate the tenets that have allowed Disney to become as successful as it has. The easy solution would be to bite the bullet. Do your market research and make a calculated gamble at catering to the demonstrably larger audience. Captain Marvel did not suffer a box office setback due to the picketing and protesting about Brie Larson's outspoken attitude about representation or the fact that this was a strong female character in general. And neither did
the
The Force
brand took a
Awakens
hit,
suffer
though.
a box office.
See, the reason people didn't like Captain Marvel is because Brie Larson has no ass.
That's true.
And the reason that Spider-Man movie's been so successful recently is because
He
of
has
the
good
inverse.
ass.
He does
Oh.
have Let me find that picture. Let me pull that up. Let me pull
Well,
Well,
that
and
up.
the
how
good
many
Spider-Man butt.
people like I feel like the whole Captain Marvel thing where it's like, oh, she made political statements, so nobody boycotted the movie. Like I feel like that was overblown by a lot of people online, and just the movie just wasn't good.
I
You
heard
know?
the movie wasn't good, and I based on
I
what
didn't
I
watch it.
understand, is a lot of people didn't watch it
Yeah.
compared to other movies. I'm sure it pulled a profit. They're pretty good at pulling a profit on whatever
Oh yeah, I think it made a bill. It made a billion.
property they put out because it's all tied in. It's sort of a unfair thing because they tie it into everything else. So it's like, well, if you want to understand Avengers, you better have watched this crappy prequel that we put out.
Yeah, that's right, because
I
they
don't
really
give a shit about
marketed it as
comic
having
book
a lot.
movies.
So it's all tied in, you know? You gotta watch all the movies to understand what's going on.
It's like
That's
poetry.
why
It's
it
like
rhymes.
poetry. You know, it rhymes. Each stanza sort of rhymes with the last. Hopefully, it'll work.
Hopefully it'll work. This
Wonder-
is why I gave up on Marvel eventually. I was just like, you know, I don't understand what's going on. I don't care anymore.
See, I give up on Marvel because I have more than 2 brain cells rattling around in this skull.
I was like,
So-
I liked Avengers. I remember liking Avengers a lot. Avengers 2 was some trash. I fell asleep during that movie.
I also just don't
then-
go to the movie theater very often, so there's that.
Yeah, we do.
Mhm.
My family definitely doesn't go. The most we ever went was for Lord of the Rings. We went every Christmas for a couple years there.
Mm.
Because that was, you know, it was a good Christmas movie. It's big, it's like 3 hours long.
Ah, yes,
it's
the
a good-
Christmas classic, Lord of the Rings.
It's a good theater movie, you know, and they were released around Christmas if I remember correctly.
Mm.
That was sort of the different strategy they used, was they had Christmas time release dates instead of summer.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked well for them. What can you say? But yeah, more Marvel movies just got so just complicated and over
They got too formulaic.
too
I think.
formulaic. Everything was sort of like mixed in on each other. It's too self-referential.
Yeah, Captain Marvel is a perfect representation of what Marvel ended up becoming and is now. Where
And
it's just completely formulaic and just kind of boring by the numbers.
And I
Plus, it's just
probably-
oversaturated.
Yeah.
Plus, it's just oversaturated in the culture. Like, everywhere
Yeah.
you go, it's superhero this, superhero that,
And
superhero, you know, coming out everyone's rear ends.
Yeah, and I should watch Captain Marvel sometime because I have this theory that like part of the issue with female superheroes is that people who write female superheroes don't understand. They play it up as like, oh, girls are gonna look up to her, right? Like girls are gonna be like, oh, finally a superhero for me, and it totally plays into the male power fantasy, which is a complete disconnect from what girls fantasize about.
Yeah.
They don't fantasize about being able to beat up men on the street. This is
Yeah.
like the opposite of what they fantasize. They fantasize about being the victim of some thug on the street, okay? This is my great theory.
I think that I think you're right, actually, that boys and girls have different motivations and they want different things to happen to them if they're the protagonists of a story. Like boys have something they want to go out and do, right?
Mhm.
They want to go out and be a hero. They want to go out and find the treasure. They want to go out and defeat the monster, right? Whereas girls want something to happen to them. Like they
Yeah.
want a handsome knight to save them. They want to be in dire circumstances so they can be saved by a Prince Charming. They want someone to do something for them to raise them up.
You know
as
what the
it were.
perfect movie is that
Um,
illustrates exactly what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Romancing the Stone.
Never heard of it.
You never heard of Romancing the Stone?
Mm-mm.
Oh
It's
my god,
a-
I know I'm old, but come on now. That
Romancing?
movie perfectly illustrates what you're talking about to a T.
It's
I'll have to look
Robert
that
Zemeckis
All
film.
of us were born during the dinosaur age.
Yes.
Stars Michael Douglas
Yes.
Okay.
and Danny DeVito's in it too.
Oh,
Danny
nice.
DeVito
Oh.
is in it. That is correct. He's a bad guy.
It was. Oh, that's gonna be great then.
Yeah.
Let's see. Joan Wilde is a romance novelist. Let's see.
Yeah,
She
like any female written romance novels, you're gonna get this theme of the hapless, innocent female protagonist who just falls into this relationship with this rugged, sort of apparently untamed man who she has to tame, and she has to like, it's the Gilgamesh story. That's it. It's
and that's what Romancing the Stone is. It's a send up of romance novels.
although I kind of don't get the bad boy trope. You know, a lot of girls when when you ask them how can you find this piece of shit attractive, right? But they're like, I can change him. I can change him, but you change him from what? Into someone that you weren't really attracted to in the first place? That doesn't make sense to me. Like,
I think there's
if you're-
something very primal about it. The primacy about it is the desire to have that strength that could potentially protect you from outside forces. So that's like the first thing. You have someone who's strong, physically strong and emotionally strong, like he can protect you from the bad stuff. But at the same time, you know that trait often comes with sort of abusive tendencies towards yourself. So you want to fix that part. You want to tame him in the sense that you want to make him sensitive to your needs and to your feelings enough that you can keep that hard exterior but have the soft interior. It's having that balance. So I think a lot of the times it's the desire to keep the physical, but sometimes for women deluding themselves into thinking they can make the metaphysical transformation for themselves. Like, I can do
also,
it.
every time I think of Michael Douglas, every time I think of now. So I've been binging like the Come Town podcast, which is genuinely pretty funny, even though they're like super hyper left. But they have a recurring joke where they like do impressions of different like celebrities, and so they do this one of Michael Douglas, and it's the joke is usually some variation of hi, I'm gay actor Michael Douglas, even though Michael Douglas isn't gay at all. And then like he gets to be like he's a gay, racist, black Hotep actor Michael Douglas, even though like he's obviously like a white man.
Nice.
And he's and now I just can't think of Michael Douglas without just thinking of like gay, black, racist Hollywood actor Michael Douglas.
I mean, are we not all gay, black, racist? You know, on the inside, anyway.
And then their impression of him is great because he's like 6 million years ago we all talked like Michael Douglas.
I remember Milton Friedman's famous line where it's "We're all gay, black, Hotep now."
Anyway,
Office backlash from people protesting an apparent black protagonist, which was absolutely a J.J. Abrams red herring, and Boyega deserves better.
Okay,
So,
wasn't it-
I agree.
Hold on.
Safe.
Yeah, he's absolutely right there. Can we all agree that stuff was fake?
didn't deserve.
Oh, that was fake as fuck.
It was completely fake, and I think if it were tasked to me to like rewrite that entire trilogy, first I'd ask them how much they would pay me, and number two, I would just have gotten rid of Rey entirely. I would have just cast Finn as the next.
I know. How interesting was that story? A defecting stormtrooper.
Exactly.
I mean, how interesting was that?
And I think that
And they
They
just
just
didn't do
made him a-
fucking anything
They
with
just
it.
made him a joke character. Like,
Yeah,
haha.
and as a
Sidekick.
punchline. And just like,
He's
man,
the,
what a mishandling of such a
Have,
brilliant
have any
idea.
of you
the
watched
funny
the
sidekick.
Critical Drinkers rewrite?
No.
I have not.
I wish.
So Critical Drinker did a video where he talked about how he would have written the arc, and I think it was really good because he's like, okay, I would have had it set up this way. He would have, by the third movie, there would have been this sort of pinnacle moment where he and Rey both used the Force at the same time to lift the rocks together, and like had this big revelation about his identity. Like, he just went through the whole arc, and it's so much better. You can tell.
Mhm.
Character for him could have been so much more, but instead it became a bit character.
like he just became a clumsy, a clumsy black sidekick who is always servicing, doing stuff for the faultless white woman, which the
She's not.
implications of
Progressivism to a T.
I think so. I think Rey could have been saved, but she needed to be fundamentally flawed.
Yeah,
and the
she was
fundamental
not.
flaw, and I think even Critical Drinker did a rewrite of her, and I agreed with it, which was her flaw should have been that she didn't trust people. Because what would be the result of being dumped on a desert planet and left to fend to yourself? You wouldn't trust anybody.
exactly.
You'd be hyper vigilant against anyone trying to use you, and you would sell out anybody who you came across. Because screw other people, you have to survive. And if
Yeah, she'd almost be like Robert De Niro in Heat. Like, you never get into a relationship you can't walk away from.
Like, the moment the droid comes up, she's gonna sell that droid. Like, she doesn't care. Because she has to live. That should have been her character, and should have been a process of trying to learn to trust and learn to be invested in a bigger narrative than herself. But instead, she was perfect and great and super, and just super friendly and connected to everybody immediately.
Wasn't that just kind of bullshit what he said, where it's like there was like a uproar against Finn being black? I thought that was all.
That was very
based off like 3 tweets.
It was super.
It seems like it was just
planned.
a manufactured outrage.
Yeah, it was like a manufactured outrage.
It was all Fed posts. Let's be real.
Yeah. Chloe's.
Like, oh, black people in Star Wars? That never happened before.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really cared. I think that was probably pretty all fake.
Yeah, pretty much. It was just I noticed that film companies have a trend of fomenting or augmenting controversies on the internet to get people to go actually pay to see their movie.
Oh yeah, the latest Bond movie did that really, really much, where they were
the Ghostbusters reboot did that most famously.
Yep.
Yeah,
it was if you don't go see this movie, then you're a sexist piece of garbage, and that's just it's just a way to get butts in seats, pretty much, and get money for Sony.
You're basically siding with incels on the internet. If you don't.
Yeah, and remember they tied it into the Hillary Clinton campaign too, because didn't Hillary Clinton come out and favor the movie or something like that?
Famed, feminist Hillary Clinton, who threw women under the bus to support her husband. Good times.
Yep.
What a wonderful wife. All right, let's keep going.
Safe to say that erring on the side of increasing visible, meaningful representation would not generate a significant setback.
Why does Ross, the largest friend, not simply eat the other 5?
But when it comes to the LGBTs, instead, Disney has been trying to play the field, with little snippets of queer representation here and there, but with the plausible deniability to insist that they haven't actually put gays in their movies, but at the same time not saying that they're not putting gays in their movies. So it goes that people who follow movie media news are a little bit more socially minded than the average Joanne and Cletus. So Disney promotes a film and their first gay character, knowing that it will really only be picked up by mostly very online audiences. And then, upon release, there's so little gay there that parents' groups won't boycott it because they don't notice it. And it was cute at first. The gays were patient. We know what Disney is, and we know the kind of people who oppose us. And we know that they scream family values at the slightest inkling of gay hand-holding. But I think we assumed that Disney would at some point stop dipping their toes in and dive headfirst when they realized how warm the water was, especially after realizing how much money we gays spend on Disney-branded everything.
So what is it? Is it they're overestimating their market value?
What do you
that's
mean?
for sure.
I was saying, we spend so much money. Is it the reality that they spend more money than the straight parents buying movies for their kids?
Well,
yeah.
Don't tell me that. That's so fucking sad.
For one thing, he's gonna have to stop saying we. I hate this trend of one person using the we gays. Screw you, buddy. We have very little in common aside from the fact that we're both attracted to other men. We
I
have
did that last
nothing.
podcast. I used we a lot.
Like, I just don't like this idea of
I don't have anything in
corralling
common with
people
you,
into
animal,
groups.
other than that, considering
I just
you're
like
an
this whole
ancient
idea of
monster.
corralling people into groups based on like the bare bones characteristic of we're both attracted to people of the same sex. Like, do you group straight people into just a group, or or do you group like redheads into a group, or blonde hair and blue eyed people into a group because they have similar physical characteristics? Like,
I can think of one person that grouped blonde-haired, blue-eyed people into a group.
yeah, we're not.
Well, you know what they do to redheads, so don't.
Oh
yeah.
no! Don't remind me.
Redheads are all black people now.
Look at me! Look at me! I am the redhead now.
So bad.
Why is this so
That's-
true? What do they have against them? Redheads are the most oppressed minority. I think that's all we can really say.
It's because they're okay. I can't say that word.
Because they don't have souls.
Yeah, it's because of they're potato people. They don't have soul.
Yeah. Well, I probably got some potato people in my genealogy somewhere, so.
I thought you were gonna say basement.
Yeah.
Well, in my basement too. That's like a whole other operation, but
Said these humanoid potato hybrids growing in your basement like a root cellar.
I'll make wine out of them, or I'll make vodka out of them, I guess is the proper thing. But yeah, I guess this whole Disney gay culture thing just really makes me think, like, man, y'all just didn't have a childhood, and so now you're adults just
Yeah.
chucking money at a giant corporation to do these little kid shows.
Well, he's
Super
thinking
invested.
about gay kids now and them feeling included.
He says he is, but it really comes across as this is what he wants.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, especially him. Yeah, but here, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Disney's consistent reluctance to butt heads with the shrinking numbers and waning power of gay avoidant parents groups has led to a culmination of very ungraceful stabs at projecting queer messaging. The defense now, apparently? Kids just can't be gay.
That's like Isaac Newton's fourth law of motion or whatever. You see, you've got a body at rest will stay in rest. A body in motion stays in motion. Every action has an equal opposite reaction. Kids can't be gay. Oh, well, there you go. There you have it.
I'm gonna still wait for him to mention China and all this, or any international market.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
We
in
just
the
do a
US
lot
it's
of media.
less, but international market is different than the US.
I like we've paused on this still where it's like the one kid is like beating the devil out of the other kid in this picture. Where's my money? I need my money, man.
Have any of us seen this actual movie?
I didn't.
I
I
haven't.
don't watch Disney anymore.
It looked like garbage, so I didn't watch it.
I don't watch kids movies.
Yeah,
I heard
I'm not
that's a
interested
good
in kids
policy.
movies.
I don't know.
I heard it described as I heard it
I
described.
don't have anything against kids movies. I love Ghibli, but I just don't watch any kids movies other than like the occasional Ghibli movie.
I heard this movie described on 4chan as "Call Me by Your Shape of Water," which okay, if any of you haven't seen Call Me by Your Name, go see it. It's a gorgeous movie. It's set in southern Italy by the coastline in the summer, and it's just exudes brilliance from a cinematography standpoint. The music is really great. It's got Sufjan Stevens doing 2 different tracks for the film. It stars Timothée Chalamet, aka that one twink who's in a lot of movies, and Armie Hammer, and it's honestly just a great film. So go watch Call Me by Your Name. It's fantastic. And there's my 2 bits on that.
There you go.
Also, this picture is
This is why shippers went crazy.
No, I was gonna say it's why you can't trust Italians.
Oh, that's also true. Also true.
True.
Media analysis about Disney movies in the last video, so we don't have to do that here. Link in the description, though, if you missed it. But I am absolutely sick of the straights telling me that Disney's not going to have out and proud queer characters in their movies because their movies are for kids. I'd like to know, what about being gay makes us unsuitable for children? To all the allies who rush to Disney's defense, they really ought to know this is the exact same argument that was used when gays weren't allowed to adopt or even raise their own children for the longest time. Why we weren't allowed to be teachers.
It's
Yeah.
our gun, it's our house, and my dildo.
Oh dear.
From the straight really. Why are you so afraid of having your little brats exposed to two kissing cartoon ladies? Are we still in the era of being worried that seeing gay media is going to turn your kids gay? I do want to point out that in lieu of the prior video about Disney's ongoing vendetta against gay characters, that they are perfectly comfortable depicting queer stories, as long as they don't have queer characters. Queer stories around alienation, isolation, societal prejudice, and walking into a small town and having to ask yourself if you're going to die there.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we have.
I don't think that's
those stories of like feeling alienated, feeling isolated, and feeling out of place. That's not just a gay experience.
Yeah,
That's
I
literally
feel
the
like those
human
are
condition.
universal human conditions there.
Yeah,
No,
and
no,
him,
no.
he's trying so
No.
hard to just like delineate what is a gay experience and separate it from everything else. And there are things that are different about being gay, but it's just not everything is different. Like we do have shared experiences, you know?
No, I don't think so. I think that like you're just like an alien creature, and you don't, and you can't feel the way that normal people feel. I'm sorry,
What
Dan.
Normal
are-
people.
So I have to
What are
break this
normal
to you,
people?
but
Who the heck are they?
I've never met one, but they're real. I promise.
Oh my goodness.
And it's not like we want to harm children's media. Even in 2021, straight people do exist these days.
What?
For now. But the difficulty
Hold up. What? Did he just say straight people existed? I'm triggered.
Did you know?
Again.
Did you know that straight people, guys, did you guys know that heterosexual people exist?
Well,
Oh my god!
I
hopefully.
don't believe you.
Hopefully they put in some laws to put an end to this madness.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say.
Also,
Sure.
what is this fish thing on the screen? This sushi ass looking
I'm gonna eat it.
mofo.
I'm gonna eat
Uh,
it.
That's
I'm gonna
from
chop it
that's the
up.
Luca.
Dice it up, fry it with some olive oil, some
Yeah,
herbs.
dog.
Eat that with some linguine. Mmm,
For sure.
delicious.
Tasty.
Comes how Luca is essentially the perfect gay youth love story. Yet, any instance of it being intentionally mentioned.
When boys hug and feel things for each other, it's gay.
Well, and here's the thing
Yeah.
about Luca. I kind of read a little bit about the movie because he talks about it and he's got a huge bone to pick with it. The creator of Luca, he stated that it's about a friendship that he had as a boy growing up in Italy, and it's all about his like friendship and what they had together. You know, so I mean, he really, really, really wants it to be a gay story and read it that way. And he's really upset that the filmmaker said, "Well, no, it's not a gay story. It's about me. It's been my friendship that I had when I was a boy growing up." And he just doesn't like that.
I don't know. I think that you can retroactively, control, interpret somebody else's art in movies the way you want it to force your own ideas on it. There's no problem with that.
This is kind of where
Just piss all over somebody else's art. That's fine.
authorial
Yeah.
intent question comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not
Yeah.
a good answer to that.
But-
from the final edit. We're on screen.
But
But-
what I was gonna say, is you can't then take an author's statement where he's like, "Well, no, this is what I meant by it," and then be like, well, that's because the company that made it is anti-gay and that's why it's not gay. And not take that into consideration that the author's statement was like, well, no, it's not gay because this is about my life and it's not about a gay romance that I had, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
you're
that's kind
wrong
of what he's
because this
doing
guy
with
is
it.
obviously doing that. So
Yeah, he is doing that. So I mean, that's just my contention with this whole thing with when he talks about Luca.
Yeah.
And
Part of this whole conversation, and I wonder what this is doing to relationships in general. I felt like in the last 10 years we've kind of lost the vocabulary to talk about friendships in a really concrete way.
yeah, it's always got
Especially
to
for
have
boys,
a romantic.
it's supposed to have this erotic overlayer, like, oh, you must be gay because
Mhm.
this. And I
Yeah,
think
people
that's really
really.
restricted things.
There's really like a large reading of like a movie like Stand By Me in the modern lens now of just like, well, that was a gay boy romance movie, Stand By Me, when it's like one of the greatest movies about friendship and young kid friendship ever.
Yeah, and I
You
think
know.
and I think some like Tumblr and Twitter types have sort of sensed this power shift. They said,
Mhm.
we can make things queer just by talking about it enough.
There's this quote from The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis, where he talks about the four kinds of love, the Greek words for love. And he talks about friendship or philia, and he's obviously approaching it from a Christian standpoint. But I think it reads as follows: "Quote: Those who cannot conceive friendship as a substantive love, but only as a disguise or elaboration of eros, betray the fact that they have never had a friend. The rest of us know that, though we can have erotic love and friendship for the same person, yet in some ways nothing is less like a friendship than a love affair. Lovers are always talking to one another about their love. Friends hardly ever about their friendship. Lovers are normally face to face, absorbed in each other. Friends, side by side, absorbed in some common interest. Above all, Eros, while it lasts, is necessarily between two only, but two, far from being the necessary number for friendship, is not even the best. And the reason for this is important. Uh,
Mm.
True friendship is the least jealous of loves. Two friends delight to be joined by a third, and three by a fourth, if only the newcomer is qualified to become a real friend. They then can say, as the blessed souls say in Dante, "Here comes one who will augment our loves, for in this love, to divide is not to take away." Unquote. And I think that opening, the idea that people who only see friendship as something erotic, who have never actually had a friend, I think there's something that rings very, very true. When you think about people who will ship any two characters of the same sex, no matter what the circumstances or what the fandom is, right? It's like
Yeah,
they see
I
two
think some of
people.
it is just like inexperience.
It's like they don't know. They know neither friendship nor eros. They don't know what love is. They don't know how to
Yeah.
love. They just understand that everything is somehow connected to an erotic impulse. They can't conceive of anything more than just the erotic, and so they love everything, any display of affection between two people as merely erotic. It's like those kids who, like, if you went up in like elementary school, who if you talked to anybody of like the opposite sex, they would just start saying that you were in love with them,
Hmm.
but you very obviously weren't, and like they would just tease people about it, and it discussed, and it's sort of the same weird obsession. Although it's much worse because it's happening in the minds of people who you would expect to be fully emotionally mature, but who instead apparently act like overgrown toddlers.
Screen in all but name and identity, and though some may argue that should be enough, that really is the most important step. And yes, there is a clump of gay people, usually gay men, of a certain age, who are going to hold out and insist that it's never going to count as proper gay representation until there is sex on screen. Dicks in butts. We really don't need that.
I think we met those two in the last video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only gay until their kinks show up.
But you know what? He is going to say something in this video that it like is applause worthy, where he says that homosexuality is not about sex. And that's kind of what he's alluding to here. But he keeps on laying it at the feet of straight people and like heterosexuality and stuff like that as to why this isn't happening. And a lot of it is kind of the out there attitude of a lot of the vocal members of the gay community kind of turning a lot of the culture against it. Like
Yeah.
those two that we watched previously, where they're like, well, you know what? It's okay to be out in public, like in a leather thong and a neoprene dog mask in front of your kid. Just talk to them about what a furry is. I'm like, oh, no. Like that's why we're not seeing this representation. And
It's a confusion.
it's a criticism that he's missing on, that he's really missing out on. It's a big part of the equation that he's just completely ignoring.
Confusion of categories about whether it's sexual or whether it's not.
Yeah.
Toxicity in our lives, though. And I mean, they're too busy going to gay party boats to watch movies anyway. Most of us, though, aren't asking for that. We're not asking for a lot, actually. I don't know, holding hands, specifically romantic language, maybe a tiny little peck on the cheek, something like that. Nothing that wasn't in the early Disney movies. For these reasons, I have a hard time wrapping my head around the idea that gay content is inherently unsuitable for children. If being gay wasn't suitable for children, then these obviously queer experiences and obviously queer characters would be rejected by purity groups everywhere. However, they're not. And they instantly find themselves among the library of Disney classics. So if we're accepted in everything but name, why is it just the outing these characters that's the hard part?
So it seems like this argument is there are queer characters, they just aren't in name, they're doing queer things, and these parent groups are just accepting it.
And they must
On
be
the
queer
basis-
because they're not being picketed by parents groups.
Well, I think by his description, he's saying these are queer representations.
Yeah, and he's saying they're queer representation because he identifies with it.
What it would be more likely then is that these parent groups see those relationships as platonic.
Or they see the
I also
experience
have
as
to
universal.
disagree with another
Or or at least universal enough so that even a straight child could watch the story and be like, yeah,
well, even
this is like a
straight
friendship.
adult parent can watch the story and identify with it.
Or that too, but I think part of like any of these movies is you need to have a film that connects to the experience of the target audience. Does the child be like, oh yeah, this is something I've experienced, I relate to this concept of like having like a little child crush on somebody, is that something I relate to? And if not, it's gonna feel weird and they might not gravitate towards it.
Do kids watch movies to relate to them, or do they watch movies to live through them?
It depends, I think, probably based on who's the main character.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because if
think
the
most
main
kids,
character is like a little kid, they're gonna kind of follow the little kid perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like kids loved like Star Wars, and they didn't think of
and
like
so those
Luke
are
as,
sort
like,
of aspirational. is what I
exactly.
think. Like I
Yeah.
want to be like that guy. I want to have a lightsaber and chop bad guys, and so you can kind of live yourself through it. And it's interesting too, like Luke, despite the sort of early flirtations with Leia, doesn't have much of a sex drive throughout the entire series. He's just kind of he's the boring farm boy who gets to go beat up bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important to his relatability.
I mean, I'm thinking about the movies and things that I was obsessed with as a kid. None of them involved kids. All of them involved adults doing fantastic or adventurous things, and me also wanting to do that.
Yeah. So I guess the next question would be, how do children relate to child characters?
Yeah. I always thought
do they really relate to them, or do they see them as like these other non-self creatures that they don't?
I guess it depends on how old I think it depends on how old the child is.
Yeah.
Like,
Probably.
obviously, a 3-year-old is not going to relate to the characters in a movie because they're just not at the point where they can relate in the way that like older kids and adults can relate to other people, right? They're 3. I
Mhm.
mean, what are they going to do? They're going to sit in front of the TV and suck their thumbs or whatever 3-year-olds do. um, but think of like once a child starts developing like understanding what emotions are and dare I say the beginnings of reason, when they're like 7, 8, 9, 10,
Yeah.
then yeah, I think they will start once they start to understand complex emotions and complex ideas outside of just outside of like hunger, parents, sad, happy, once they start to
Mhm.
understand more complex emotions, they'll start to grasp the I think they'll start to relate to characters as in they'll understand the emotions of other people, have that little bit of empathy.
Mhm.
And then that sort of granted that sort of gets extinguished around adolescence because it's weird. Boys and girls apparently experience a dip in empathy as they until they're about 18 or 20.
That sounds
Um,
about right.
Girls more so
Yeah.
than boys.
The middle and
Like
high
girls
school
were
years, man, they're rough.
Yeah, they become
like
psychopaths.
Just
like
abuse each other.
especially like I notice this is much more obvious in girls than in boys, where it's like you you I'm gonna say like you say the wrong thing to a boy, he'll get angry about it, but he's not gonna like hold on to that. Say the wrong thing to a girl or so on, she'll either get really really sad or really really angry.
Yup, and she'll
And that's
hold
when you
on to
get like
that, and she'll nurture it, and she'll
it'll
plot
fester
a
and
10-step plan of revenge.
she'll tell her friends, and her friends are gonna come after you, and your ass is grass at that point. If you're a teenage boy and you do that to a teenage girl, and she tells her friends and her little clique, your name is Mud. You are
Yeah.
done for. You know.